All right, we're going to pop back into the material graph and pick up where we left off. Now we're talking about utility nodes. So far, we should have an understanding of what materials are. So if I go ahead and add something like a plastic, and I want to place it on top of this metal, the way we do that, remember, layered materials are basically just labels. So we grab this plastic and we pull its outbound connector and plug it into the inbound socket on the root node in the label section. So now our plastic, let's make it something colorful, is on top of our metal. If we go to our our root node into the labels, we see a plastic label. This is the plastic. And if we select it and go to its properties, it's blue. So we see it right here. So we have a blue label on top of our metal. Okay, before we use any utilities, it would be a good idea to have at least one texture in play here. So I'm going to right click and grab a texture, and this time it's going to be the camouflage. So let's plug the camouflage into the diffuse color of our plastic. So our plastic, instead of being blue, inherits its color from the camouflage. We'll take our camouflage, scale it down a little bit, and click on the mix colors. There we go. So now let's talk about what we can do with some of our utility nodes. What I want to do is grab something called a color adjust, the second one down, and I want to place it between the camouflage and the plastic. The way I'll do that is I'll click the connector once to select it, right click on it, go to utilities, and choose the color adjust because that's what I want to place in there. Now watch in the real-time view as I adjust the hue of the color adjust. We should see that the camouflage is changing. And not just one color at a time, but the entire hue is changing of each color within each cell, which is really a fun, fast way to change this appearance of this material. And it's non-destructive because if we were to disconnect this and go back to the plastic, you'll see our camouflage hasn't changed at all. So we use these nodes to kind of build upon the previous node. It's almost like an adjustment layer in Photoshop. So if I take the color adjust, we can increase the saturation. It'll be a little bit brighter, more colorful, 1.5. We can play with contrast, increase that or decrease it, however we see fit. Again, this is going to make changes to this texture node before passing it on to the plastic. So what other utilities might we have here? We have something called a color invert. Let's play with that. So if we take our color adjust, plug it into the source, and the invert into the plastic, we get literally the opposite color. So where we had these bluish hues, now we have these light red hues. And if we went into our color adjust and we played with that here, you'd see we could play with this and maybe increase the contrast a bit. So if we have this kind of blue here and we get rid of our color invert, now you'll see we have more of a greenish color here. Sorry if I'm off on my colors, I'm a bit colorblind. If we go to our utilities, we have other things like color composite, color invert, color to number, color key mask, curve color randomize, and mapping 2D. Now we're not going to go through necessarily all of these, but let's talk about another very common one, bump add. So for now I'm going to disable, or delete rather, these textures, and let's grab a simple texture called noise texture and plug that into the bump of our plastic. So we have this blue plastic, and let's make it black so it's easier to see the effect of this bump texture. Now, if I want to take another texture like scratches and plug it into the bump texture, the problem is it makes the other one go away, it disconnects it. The only way to use two bumps together in KeyShot is to use a utility node called bump add. So once I add that in, we can take our noise texture and plug that into bump number 2. And now we have both of these working together in conjunction. And we can still independently control each one of these textures as we have been doing. And the bump add node just gives us a weight slider, which is like the strength of each individual texture, so you can get the right balance. So what else do we have here as far as utilities go? Well, there's another one in particular that we use quite a bit called color composite. It's like a bump add, but it's meant to combine multiple colors. So let's plug that into the diffuse, and let's bring back our camouflage. So textures and camouflage, and we'll plug it into the source. There we go. So there's our great camouflage. But what if I want also a color gradient? So I'll go down and grab my textures and color gradient. And if I preview this, let's make sure we have a color. Let's just do, I don't know, blue. We'll just do like a dark blue. Great, so we have blue fading to white. Now, what if I want to overlay this blue-white on top of this camouflage? It would be hard to do without this color composite. In fact, it'd be impossible. So we plug the color gradient into the background of the color composite. Color composite, think of it almost like source as being layer number 2 and background as being layer number 1. And then when we double click our color composite, we get to blend these together, choose a blending mode. And if you don't know about blending modes, you can look those up. This controls how each of these layers interact with one another. So if I set it to multiply, we now are overlaying this blue on, to white gradient on top of the camouflage. Now we're not using the overlay blend mode, but we're basically saying the way these are interacting with one another, we're multiplying the color gradient texture on top of the camouflage, and this is the result we get. Now, if we wanted to see a different effect, we could try screen, and screen takes the white pixels and it makes everything, takes anything lighter than 50% gray, and then it lightens everything underneath it. Multiply does basically the opposite, which is why we had the dark area and the white was ignored. We can do overlay, and that will change it a little bit. It changes how the colors interact with each other. We can play with all these different settings are going to give us different results. And so if you understand your blend modes, you can control them here. You have source and background alpha, which is like your kind of the strength of these two textures. So this can be really useful as well. And the last one that I want to call out is one that most people have quite a bit of trouble with, and this one's called color to number. So I want to grab a, let's see, utility called color to number, and I also want to grab a texture called granite. This will probably be the easiest way to see this. Now, if I preview granite on its own, we know it's a very kind of organic looking texture. But there's not a lot of control in its settings. And what if I want these black areas to be much darker and more contrast? Well, I can control those with a color to number. For example, if I plug that into the input and I preview my color to number, we have 4 sliders that are just set to 0 and 1, 0 and 1. And this is, again, I know a little bit confusing, but hang with me. Inputs from and to represent the white and black, or rather the black and white values respectively. So if we look at the color, I don't know if you recall when we talked about color, we have this value thing that runs from 0 to 100, or 0 to 1, and 0 represents black and white represents 1. So when we look at our color to number, we have an input from set to 0, and since 0 represents black, the input from 0 represents the darkest pixels we see in this texture right now. The 1 represents white, and since it's set to input, it represents the whitest pixels on this texture. Even if they're not pure white, they're represented by this value 1. Now the output from and to are the values that this node will send along to whatever it gets plugged into. So if we have output set to 0, and we increase it, what we're going to do is take that dark value and make it lighter. And conversely, if we take the 1, which represents the lighter values, and we reduce it down, it will darken it. So it's just like, almost like a curves adjust or a levels adjust a little bit, but you're remapping these values and you can do some pretty cool and drastic things with them. So like I said before, what if I wanted to take the black areas and make them darker and more contrasty? I could take the input from and I start to increase that, and it kind of erodes the white areas. And then I could take the output 2 and set it to like 3, and now we have this much more contrasty, more interesting shape. And I've taken a procedural texture and I've further customized it or shaped it with this color to number. Now, if I wanted, I could plug this into something like our roughness, and we would have areas that are, let's make this a little easier to see. Delete all these. So we have our color to number controlling the roughness. We have black areas are totally glossy, and rough areas are totally rough. Or sorry, white areas are totally rough. So if we previewed this and we took this output to way, way, way down, what we would get is something that's a lot more uniform with these really glossy areas. And if we didn't want those areas to be perfectly glossy, we could preview this and make sure that those black areas don't go to pure black. We could increase the output from to lighten them. So we still have some variation in the roughness, but it's a lot more subtle. And this gives us, again, a much more organic, realistic kind of wear. And I use this granite plus color to number all the time to create this kind of variable roughness on a lot of my finishes. So those are my favorite and most commonly used utilities. By no means is that all of them or the only way you can use them, but the idea is to get you thinking about ways you can use utilities to take your procedural textures or image-based textures and really extend the use of them and really customize them in the material graph. So that's an overview of utility nodes. Next, we'll talk about adding imperfections, which we've kind of hinted at, but this is the start of it with this granite and maybe some scratches and things like that.